how many complaints have you guys gotten, and what's the point of this investigation?
Yeah, we've already gotten more than 3,000 complaints related to this Delta breakdown, which began on Friday. The good news is it appears as of today that flight operations are finally back to normal. But we're investigating how this could have happened in the first place, and we're especially focused on the issue of taking care of customers. When there is a disruption, you need to be able to get a hold of a customer service agent who can help you, someone who can make sure you get the vouchers for meals, hotels, rebooking, that kind of thing, and somebody who can get you on your way. So when we hear these reports of somebody having to wait online for 8 hours to speak to somebody on the phone, people sleeping on the floor in airports because they weren't able to get accommodated or taken care of, that's a major concern, and that's going to be a big focus of our investigation.
I'm not sure if you are able to reveal what are some of the complaints you guys have gotten, or some of the majority of the complaints you guys have gotten. What were they complaining about that Delta didn't do or was failing at?
Well, of course, the staff is still working through this volume of thousands of complaints that came in, but what we're looking for is any examples of where a basic requirement was not met. For example, Delta made enforceable commitments to us back in 2022 when we were pushing all the airlines to improve their customer service. Delta made commitments about taking care of passengers with accommodations, meals, that kind of thing, if you do get stranded in a scenario like this. So we want to see that that's actually happening. We also need to see that Delta met its obligation to provide a cash refund to any passenger who wanted one when a flight was canceled if you didn't take the rebooked flight. And we're also looking at things like those customer service wait times. That's part of what we're hearing a lot about. So lots of causes for concern in the complaints that we're hearing, the stories we've been hearing, and the data we're getting. But as part of this investigation, Delta is also required to directly provide us with their data about things like customer service wait times.
I know obviously they're a private company. They have made commitments to the Department of Transportation of how they're going to treat customers and passengers who do fly with them. But they're a private company at the end of the day. Why does it matter if they treat someone badly? I mean, people don't have to go back to them.
It's our job to make sure that there is a basic floor of consumer protection. Companies can compete on how good of a job they do taking care of customers and delivering services, but we have to set a floor. And when we see things like 8-hour customer wait times, or companies not meeting their legal obligation to provide a cash refund or any other concern like that, many times in the past we have acted, including penalties for companies that did not live up to their legal requirements. Not long ago, we had an enforcement action against Southwest over their meltdown because we found that there were several examples of violations. And what we did was, instead of all of the money, the $140 million that we had in that enforcement action, instead of that all going back to the Treasury, we made sure the majority of that went back to passengers, because that's really why we're doing this. It's about protecting passengers and taking care of consumers.
Obviously, investigations take time. That one into Southwest took about a year, from 2022. You guys announced it, I believe, December 18th. I remember in the story around that time period. I mean, do you see a year from now being fining Delta for their failures of customer service?
It's too soon to say how long the investigation will take or what the result will be when it is complete. But what I will say is we opened a new chapter in enforcement with the Southwest action, and we have sought to have this be really a new era of expanding passenger rights. Those principles are going to guide us in terms of how we conduct this investigation and how we respond to what we find.
What would be on the table for something that could be of an enforceable action you guys do that Delta could theoretically face if you guys find that they did not live up to their standards that you guys expect of them?
Well, past actions, including the Southwest fine, which was partly related to their failure to provide customer service during a disruption, have also included cases where we have found airlines did not promptly offer a refund that was legally required. And what we would do there is we would have a settlement action, which would include both a fine for the airline for not complying with the law, and the most important part, which is the money going back to the consumers. In the case of Southwest, we also had a requirement that is forward-looking. In other words, part of the penalty is that they are required to provide $75 vouchers for customers who experience disruptions in the future, in addition to their legal minimums. And I will say also, in the case of the Southwest enforcement, they got credit for some of the extra compensation that they proactively provided to passengers. So one thing I'm hoping Delta is considering there's different ways that they can go above and beyond the legal minimums. That might come into play during an investigation as well.
From what you've seen, I know it's the investigation just began. From what you've seen, though, I mean, you're on social media, you see the complaints, you see all what different people are saying. I mean, did Delta fail their customers over the last week or so?
Well, clearly the conditions we saw were unacceptable, both in terms of the disruptions and what passengers had to go through to try to be taken care of. No one should ever be sleeping on the floor of an airport because they couldn't get through to customer service. And when there is a problem, even a system-wide problem, it shouldn't take one airline almost a week to recover when other airlines get back on their feet in a matter of days. Again, too soon for us to say everything that the investigation will reveal, but the point is not just to make sure there's accountability for what happened, it's to make sure things like this are less likely to happen in the first place for the future. And that is a big part of the goal of all of our work and all of the pressure we put on airlines. You remember all those cancellations that were happening a couple of summers ago. We put a lot of pressure on the airlines. They responded, and the result is last year, we saw the lowest cancellation rate in more than a decade. Up until Friday with the CrowdStrike issue, we saw similar rates this year. We're still hoping that by and large, airlines will be able to maintain low cancellation rates, but that's really our goal here, is to make sure they serve customers well. That's why we need to have accountability for cases where they don't.
We talked to yesterday the chairman of the pilots union for Delta. He said for a reasonable amount of time, they had been urging the airline to upgrade their IT infrastructure for employee facing. And he said that clearly this is what contributed to, with their crew scheduling software going out and not able to handle similar to what Southwest had, the sheer number of different things they were having to deal with trying to figure out if these pilots can fly or these flight attendants can fly. Is infrastructure one of the major things, or IT infrastructure one of the major things that you guys are going to be looking at in this case, especially with the fact that IT is such a big part of every company nowadays?
Well, it's certainly part of what we're going to be looking at. Look, by definition, aviation has a lot of technology. Aviation is technology, but what we're seeing is more and more software plays a role. Now, whether a crew scheduling system that consists of a software program getting overwhelmed, whether that's a software program or a software problem, or a problem that has more to do with just how much disruption there was, that's the kind of thing that investigators will be looking at. I want to stress, we're not in the business of telling airlines exactly how their IT ought to be managed. We're holding them accountable for the results. There are many different ways to meet the standard that we set, but we are going to set that standard, maintain it, and hold companies accountable for meeting that standard.
Last question, let's see if anything else you want to say. What's a year from now, or whenever the investigation's complete, what's the hope that when you finally guys reveal the investigative results, what do you hope happens, or what do you hope comes of it?
We're going to want to have information about what happened. We're going to have assurances that passengers are taken care of, and we're going to want accountability. And the goal will be to make sure we send a message to the entire industry and that passengers are empowered. In the meantime, if you were caught up in this, I want to urge passengers to go to flightrights.gov. You can get more information about what your rights are. And while the first step should always be to go to the airline and try to get a solution from the airline, if the airline's not doing what it's supposed to do, that's when you want to let us know about that. And the website can create a portal for you to file a complaint with us, and we'll follow up.